Okay. And we're live. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Typical Skeptic podcast. I'm really excited about my guest today for his work that he's doing with Nathaniel Gillis, Steve Mera. He's one of the UK's most respected investigative researchers, a longtime international lecturer and CEO of Awakening Expo, as well as Phenomena Magazine LTD, one of the world's largest paranormal and anomalous research publication. With over 40 years of field investigation experience, Steve specializes in UFO, UAP cases, alien abductions, demonology and parasitic intelligences, poltergeist hauntings, government secrecy, deception, and high-strangeness cases, psychological and physiological aspects of entity interactions. Steve has recently been diving deep into demonological aspects of ufology alongside his collaborator Nathaniel Gillis, exploring the idea that alien encounters may actually represent ancient non-human intelligences hiding behind the UFO phenomena. And this is a raw, unfiltered, fully uncensored, show, and it's going to be great. And you can follow Steve at Instagram.com/Steve Mera or on his YouTube channel. Check out his YouTube channel, guys. Steve Mera. And with all that said, I'd like to give him a big warm welcome back to the show. Steve, thanks for coming back on. How are you?
Thank you for having me on. Yes, I'm well, busy, but always good.
Yeah. So I know we did a show before, but it's been a while since we did a show. Tell the people, like, how did you get involved in all this? Are you an experiencer yourself, or have you just kind of always been interested in the phenomena?
No, I am an experiencer, but I did about 35 years in this subject before I came out really and said it, because in the early days it was like considered a bit, could it be a bit biased towards my conclusions if you think I'm an experiencer, but as time's gone on, I thought, hell, let's just say it as it is. That's how I got into the subject. The phenomenon came knocking at my door, you could say, as a child, and got into it from then on, really.
Yeah, and were you having like what we would call like classic abduction experiences, or
Well, I don't recall having an abduction experience, but certainly one of those things. My primary first experience was one of those. I mean, as a child, when you're 7 years of age, I don't ever recall really waking up in a night. But I woke up on this one particular night, and there was something in my bedroom, and it walked out the corner of my room, and it was, well, I mean, it's certainly non-human. Let's say it that one. Um, and since that experience, it's just like a door was just opened, and everything flooded in, and has continued to do all my life, to be honest with you. So yeah.
yeah, you guys have made some fascinating revelations lately. That, like, getting into like the abduction phenomenon, aliens and stuff. It seems like iron's a big factor. Like, it seems like people that are lacking in iron can be attacked more by entities. Is that correct?
Well, yeah. I mean, there was these old stories, and they originated in sort of Middle East and ancient Ireland and places like that, where they were utilizing iron to ward away, nasty stuff, phenomenon. Um, and when I started looking into it, I realized this is widespread. This is all over the world. Why are people utilizing, farmers were banging iron rods into the fields to stop the livestock being, attacked or taken. The horseshoe, in very medieval times, horseshoes, nothing to do with luck. It's because of what it's made of, and it was hung over doors and windows to ward away these things. In old buildings, especially throughout, England, we've got the very old Tudor type buildings, but we always knew where beds were in rooms because there was a rectangular row of iron nails banged into the floor around the bed to keep away these things at night. And then, of course, in Middle East, they use certain crystals like hematite to ward away the jinn. Hematite is about maybe 90% iron. So we really started thinking, okay, there's got to be something to this. Anyway, we've really been in headstrong about the research into why iron, and iron causes a significant disruption regarding RF frequencies, and we're assuming then that obviously the process of manifestation, the energies utilized, they're utilizing RF to manifest. It's a process of something in regarding the process of manifestation. And therefore, by iron in the vicinity, iron acts as it absorbs it. It absorbs it. So it really is very hard to seemingly hold the manifestation in the presence of iron. Hey, we're not the only ones. The Vatican were doing this when the first exorcist priest came out, started doing their work, and demonic possessions and things. The crucifixes were made of iron. And what was interestingly is that what happened is that there were incidents that took place where the crucifix would heat up in the priest's hand, and to the point where he had to sort of drop it because it was burning him. Well, that's because the phenomenon was trying to disengage the priest being in contact with iron, because he's more vulnerable when he isn't. And this is, and I've got photographs of the blisters on the hands, And the thing is that Hollywood took that, the movie industry, and thought, oh, well, they couldn't really emphasize the heating of it. They made the crucifixes burst into flames. I mean, that's a very Hollywood thing. The crucifixes never really burst into flames, but they did, when utilizing iron, they would get hot, So the phenomenon is trying to separate the contact of iron and the priest, you see, to make it more vulnerable. The more I looked into this, the more interesting it became, and I realized that there's got to be something to this then. So we started maybe about 20, 25 years ago, putting this into practice, utilizing iron, and not just bringing iron into the vicinity, but also boosting your internal system with, supplements of iron, because the phenomenon seems to target people with low iron, anemic people, those sort of things. Many women which have these terrors, these attacks, it's usually during the menstrual cycle because there's less iron in the body, and that goes back into ancient times when, the Inca or the Mayans were, sacrificed. All we get to hear is they were sacrificing men, but most of the time they were sacrificing women to these deities, these gods, whatever these things were, at the time of the menstrual cycle. Well, it's like, yeah, there isn't any iron. There's hardly any iron in them. So this has been something that's been very, very rewarding when it comes to investigations, people having problems, because we've introduced iron into the environment. We've told them to boost their system of iron supplements. And we've also introduced UV bulbs, UV light at night. And them three things together have seemingly been very rewarding when regarding the suppression of the phenomenon. So there's something to it.
So it's UV bulbs, iron, and what was the third thing?
Iron supplement for your body.
Okay, and what I had problems before with like what I would call astral parasites, and it comes on here and there. Like I've noticed, like during full moon cycles, I get attacked too. It's probably because of what I do, But like I wanted to ask you about that. Like, if you ever had any experience with like the only way I can put it is like astral parasites. Do you know what I mean by that?
You are right. You are right. I mean, everything is tied into the. I mean, you to look at the astronomy of the situation. And it's not just where the planet, it's the magnetic influence on the planet and anything that's living on it. Now, sometimes, we're kind of unaware of that because we've lost our way. Our ancient ancestors would have tapped into that. We know that from, the things that they've left behind. We know that they must have had capabilities of feeling these strange energies and things. But we've lost our way now, but it's very influential in regarding attacks and, especially negative stuff. There's certain key times and places that seem to amplify the possibility of these attacks coming on.
Yeah. What does the UV light do? And can anybody get a UV light? Do you just get a UV light bulb, or can you buy like a small, I guess we could get them off Amazon or something? Like,
yeah, you can buy UV light bulbs. I mean, I would say to utilize them because there's very little output out of them, but utilize them. Where you're sleeping. Place iron in close proximity to where you stay the longest in the vicinity. So when you talk about where people are spending the longest time, it's not in front of the television. It's actually in bed. That's where they're spending most of the time, and it's of a day period. So we place iron, close proximity to the people where the bed is, that sort of thing. UV bulbs as a night light, the ultraviolet light, because there is some phenomena that does not it evades ultraviolet. And we know that because sometimes when people have tried to, what you might refer to as clear buildings, they've ended up, these entities, these things, in the place, in the location where the only place where there's no UV. So they are evading it. I don't know if it's the whole spectrum of these entities it affects, but certainly the ones which you might refer to as, the negative type.
Yeah, yeah, wow. And but what do you think the entities are behind the abductions? Like, do you believe they're like extraterrestrials or demonic or interdimensional, or like what do you think's going on with the phenomenon? Or do you think they can manifest it from different things, like maybe
Well,
different variations?
I mean, you've got to really to know that you've got to understand where I've come from. I've come from doing 20 years of non-public experiments in regarding communications with non-human intelligence, utilizing the seance process and skirting, I say skirting, not fully in, the ritualistic magic, the ritualistic practice side of invocation. And these things come through and they communicate. You can communicate with these things. They always want you to do something, they always want worship or homage, and don't worry, you'll get something in return. I don't get involved in that sort of thing, but I skirt around the outside, just learning. You can't do it. When we first started this, we did it too often, and the phenomena tracked back to the scientists going back home because we had a monthly meeting. And when I was talking to them, they said, things are going on in my house. And I said, well, if things are going on in your house. Oh, yeah, it's going on in my house as well. That was overindulgence. I mean, it was so exciting. Don't get me wrong, Rob, when you sat there and you're seeing things and you're hearing things and incidents are happening, it's exciting. People want to go back and do it again. So you end up doing it 2-3 times in a day sometimes. Overindulgence. What happened was it got under our skin. It tracked us back home like hitchhiker, and it caused problems for the experimenters and myself. So we had to write a protocol in to say, look, we've got to slow this down. We've got to do it not 2 or 3 times a day, literally 3 times a week. That's about it. That's your limit without really getting tagged too much by this phenomenon because it hooks into you, and it can cause problems at home. So I've come from that background. So knowing what I know in the research over the years now, which has been almost 42 years, I've realized that we're dealing with something which I believe it's a source, whatever that source is. I don't know what it is. People have asked me, do you think it's God? Do you know? And I said, well, I don't know. I have no idea what the source is. And people say, well, God wouldn't do that. And I said, well, do you know your Bible? I mean, you got to know these things. If you want to look into the Bible, it actually says God delivers the good and also delivers the bad. He delivers the righteousness. He delivers the evil. God is responsible for all. That's what it says in the Bible. So I think, okay, even John Keel from many years ago, well ahead of his time, he concluded, do you know what? I think there is a source, a single source, and that source is God. I don't know if that's the case, but these things seemingly have godly power and do godly things. But all these different variations of these encounters all over the world, we're talking, well, if they're ETs, there's about 4,000 or 5,000 versions of these things now. Big, small, hairy, thick, large, half robotic, you name it. Every feasible thing goes. And you think to yourself, when in 1960s, scientists got together in the US and said, well, we're going to go out and explore space, might go to the moon or whatever. How will we identify extraterrestrial life? And the scientists concluded, well, do you know what? It only takes a minute change on a planet to make massive change in living organisms. So we might not even recognize what life looks like. So we've got all these thousands and thousands of entities, and they've all got 2 arms, 2 legs, 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, the same sort of technology. They're doing the same sort of thing. To me, they're archetypes. To me, and that was even backed up even later on in studies when I found out that in some cases the archetype changes and becomes something else. And then there were some communications through experiments saying, them saying we wear masks. There was some of them saying, well, how, what do you look like well, that depends on who's looking. So I believe we're dealing with archetypes. There's a source which is interacting with people in many, many different ways, but it's presenting itself in many, many different ways. I don't know if they're extraterrestrial. I don't think they are. I would say they're interdimensional for sure, but extraterrestrial as in traveling from another planet, I don't think so.
Yeah, that makes sense, right? You know what I was saying to someone the other day? Remember there was like the contact with the Venusians, like back in the
Yeah,
60s? I was thinking possibly like, what if like, there is something existing on Venus, but in another dimension? Like
in another
maybe in other
dimension.
dimensions, you know what I mean? Like, what do you think about that idea?
It'd
Like, do
have
you
to be because you know what? We've been to Venus, these probes and things. We know how poisonous and hot it is there. But when they're here on Earth, these Venusians, they look like us. They're breathing our air and interacting, and the gravity's the same because they can walk on the ground. They don't seem to have a problem walking around with our gravity compared to what Venus is like. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if it's even true. They first said they came from the moon, then they said they came from Venus, and then we went to Venus. Oh no, that's not the case. All right, well we've been to the moon. We haven't got big cities there that you're occupying, right? We changed. Oh, we're at Mars. No, we're not really on Mars. And it's going out and out and out, further and further into space. So it's just like we're never in reach of the answer, but we keep getting told all. It's the deception. We keep getting told all these different lies. My name's this, and I come from this planet. There are thousands of those incidents, all different names.
Hmm. I agree. What do you think about inner Earth, Steve? Do you have an opinion on inner Earth? Like, do you think there could be like civilizations existing under Earth, and like, do you think maybe that's where some of these beings might be coming from as well?
Well, I don't believe in the aspect of like something like Lemuria, or
Yeah.
under the pole or Shambhala in India and all that sort of thing. But you got to consider where these theories come from in ancient times, and maybe they saw the phenomenon in the sky and which went into the ground. Because when all the US people are talking about at the high end, oh well, it's transmedium travel. They fly in the sky, they fly in space, they can fly underwater. And when I'm on these international think tanks and I'm talking to these big guys, and I say, hang on a second, where's the fourth transmedium? They said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, they're flying into volcanoes. They can fly seemingly straight into cliffs and come out of them and fly into the ground. Some of these things have manifested out of trees. How do you work that out? Well, we do know there's a fourth medium, but we're not going to put it out there. I said, well, why? Because we're getting scientists to jump on board and help now, and we'll scare them away. We don't want to scare the scientists. We can't just drop this on the laps because it breaks all physics. I said, well, you're not being complete then if you're not going to tell the full story. So, yeah, I think that they can travel into the ground and through solid matter, the metaphysical phenomena as well as the craft is. But I don't know. I think they've definitely got certain things under the water for sure. Yeah, I definitely think that they and they might have some things underground, maybe bases and things, because they are physical when they want to be, so they can interact physically with us.
Yeah, and that's a good point you bring up about them being physical. How do you think they manifest the physical? Like, I heard you say RF, like that's radio frequency, right? So do you think they're coming through electronics and stuff like that, and then manifesting or something like maybe?
Well, I mean, look, there were certain experiments that we, as humans, have been responsible of. One of those was the Philip experiment. It took place in the 70s in Canada, Ontario. It was a group of scientists and specialists that created a ghost. Simply, they manufactured one. They drew how he looked. They gave him a lifestyle and everything. And they basically the whole experiment was to see. I wonder if we can make it. We can give birth to this ghost. Can it? And they did, and it became its own intelligent entity. Now, they stopped there, but there's two other processes. That's stage one. Stage two is to make it become a physiological construct. In other words, you're not just seeing a ghost, but it's becoming physical and interactive with you. That's stage two. And then stage three is when that physical phenomena starts to interact with you on a physical basis. So this is what these beings are doing. They create, it's spiritual technology in a sense, and it is a physiological construct. I'm a physiological construct. You are, everything else is around us. It becomes a physiological construct to interact with us. But don't get me wrong, they can turn it off because they can walk right through your wall or come through the ceiling. UFOs can be suddenly disappear off radar or go into water, not leave any weights because They're not. We might see them to be physical, but they're not always physical all the time. They can seemingly manipulate it. That seems to be the situation.
Yeah, yeah, they can manipulate reality to the way they want things to be, right? It's
Yeah, yeah.
and do you feel like some of these beings create fear states to kind of feed on humans and stuff like that?
Well, it's been hypotheses. One of those old, theories was that these are parasitic in one form or another. Um, and in some cases, they are. I mean, if you look at the poltergeist phenomena, it is parasitic. It's not about anything but generating fear and vexation and terror. The dogman incidents that take place, they don't seemingly attacking people. I mean, some people have been pursued by these dogmen and fallen over, and they're just absolutely terrified and lying on the floor, just hoping that, I mean, it's that psychological thing. If I don't move, it might not see me. Of course, it sees you. It stood right over you. Well, it's a predator. And the thing is, if you're a meal ticket, you're just lying on the floor, but they don't attack. It's like the game's up. What do I do now? And it runs away. It's about the fear, the vexation, and the terror it wants to generate. That act, to me, is like a physical poltergeist. It's like a physical form of the poltergeist phenomena. It's about creating terror and fear, just as poltergeist phenomena. So yes, there are parasitic in some cases in regarding fear generation, and maybe utilizing that energy. Other things, though, and we're talking these other different types of beings. It's hard to know. They have different agendas. Some of them are to find out about human biological systems. Some of them is about enhancing biological systems of humanity. Some of it's about technology. It's all sorts of different things. Some of it's about consciousness. So I think they have separate, different agendas for sure. There's a big operation that's been going on for a very, very long time.
Yeah, and one thing that Nathaniel talks about when I had him on is the sigilization. Do you concur with that theory that they maybe implant sigils on people and then they portal into those or something like that, or what is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I'd already come across the sigilization phenomena, um, and before I actually started conversing deeply with Nathaniel, and Nathaniel's absolutely spot on. He's got a lot more. He really has focused on the sigils, and he's done some great work in there, very professional, and it coincides with what I know about the sigilization. These are physical marks appearing on people's bodies, and I've got photographs of dermal, and then when I say subdermal, it means that the marking on the skin is come up from inside out. It's from under the skin and it raises, as opposed from on top of the skin. It's subdermal marking, a lot of this. So basically, biological things to the actual atoms of the in the skin is being affected by the phenomena. Now, what do the sigils represent? Well, it's hard to know exactly what the purpose of those sigils are, but it seems to be associated as if it's like it could be, what is it, a scorecard? Is it a signature? Is it supposed to mean something? Is that meaning that they haven't finished with you, or it's hard to really know. But what is very interesting is that some of the sigils which have been found on people's bodies after having some very bad experiences, some of them show symbols which are reflective in regarding very old, ancient, mystical writings. So there's certainly an occult connection somewhere it's going on here. And why should you be able to sit round a seance or do an occult ritual and have these things turn up? As many people would say, what are UFOs and aliens doing at a seance? They shouldn't be. But yes, they are. Then they were first appeared round seance tables long before we started hearing about the abduction phenomenon, like Betty and Barney Hill in September 1961. It was going on for a long time before then. So these things certainly have an occult connection, you could say.
Yeah, that's fascinating. Well, let me think about that. Yeah, but like they subscribe to any religion. It seems like they can kind of embody all religions or all spiritual faiths or tap into whatever the person believes in or maybe their belief system. Do you
Well,
believe
yeah,
that?
I do, because this phenomenon predates all religions. There was when this stuff was around when there were no religions, prior to religions. So all the religions, I believe, around the world have brought this phenomenon in and added it to that religion of theirs. Even we've done it with a Christian God. There's aspects in the Bible, and you can sort of say, yes, this has been adopted. It's like it's adopted from phenomenon. It's been seen, and they've called it flaming shields. They've called it this. They've called it that. Heavenly bodies, the Holy Spirit. You name it. But the thing is that I believe all these different cultures and societies have been witnessing the various different phenomena for many, many years and indoctrinated it into religion. And this is why there's a close association with some of the religions and the phenomenon.
Yeah. And do you believe there's differences in the entities? Like would you say there's differences in between like shadow beings, jinn, demons, ultra terrestrials, or do you believe they could be just appearing as different things to different people, or do you actually believe there's different kinds of entities?
Well, I mean, this phenomenon can appear different to different people. They can manipulate our perception 100%. Some people will see something different. In fact, I've had people which have been together, had a shared experience, and they can't even decide themselves between themselves as to what has been seen, because they've got different stories. Well, I didn't see that. I saw this. Because it does mess with our perceptions, and this is what it is. It's psychological warfare on humanity. And this is why it's so absurd and so crazy, because it wants to make it that way, because we can't put the dots together when we think we're going mad. But yes, you're right. And I think all these entities represent the same source, but they have different agendas. If you talk about the ancient phenomena such as jinn, well, what is the jinn described as? Well, the jinn is described as smokeless fire. Well, we're seeing this in the skies all over the world at the moment. These balls of light, it's smokeless fire. Fire was recognized as an ignition of light. Smokeless, which they are. We're seeing these all over the world. So to talking to somebody from the Middle East, I'll say the jinn are up there and they're all over the world and they're interacting with us. To the Western world, we might say, oh well, it's some form of UAP. In different countries have different names. Go to Spain, it's the Tears of Saint Lorenzo. There's all sorts of different names for it and different opinions and theories about it. But when you put them all together, it's all the same phenomenon.
Yeah. And do you believe they're coming? I guess they're probably they probably all manifest from another dimension somewhere where they exist that we can't access, or maybe some experiencers can.
They are definitely. I mean, our last visit on I'm involved in a number of international projects, and one of them is Project Doorway. And summer of last year, we were up in the Pyrenees Mountains, and we were there for the reason because of the phenomenon going into the mountain, which was very interesting, um, and some strange things that had happened there. But what was very interesting is that these locations have a tie to other locations on planets. And how do we know that? Well, when you've got no cell signal and you're up there and on top of a mountain, and then suddenly your phone pinging, from GPS, and the GPS is pinging off a station next to a lake in Canada, 4,600 miles away. How can that happen? The two
Yeah.
places, one in Canada and one in Spain, must be temporarily joined somewhere in the vicinity of us, and the cell phone signals pass through them. The signals can pass through, and I do believe that these things are around on the planet, and the phenomena utilizes them. So, and because most of it is reappearing and disappearing rather than just flying out into space all the time. The scientists are saying that there's not enough evidence to call them extraterrestrials. NASA said that September 23 concluded. Well, we know what UFOs are. We know pilots are seeing them. People reporting them. They're very legitimate. but the evidence doesn't support that they're extraterrestrial. And Arrow, the Pentagon UFO program, concluded the same thing. But it's not something new, that. It goes back 1977. John Keel said the same thing. But in 1977, Jacques Vallée also stated this, as well as J. Allen Hynek at Blue Book number 14 specialized meeting. He said there's not enough evidence that they're extraterrestrial. At the top end, they know they're not. But they've got to tell us something. And the easiest thing to digest, that narrative, which has been now for 80, 90 years maybe, is that they must be traveling from another planet. They're just aliens from another planet. But really, it's not as simple as that. And there are people up at the high level now. You don't want to take Jim Semivan, who was an ex-CIA guy, very high officer in the CIA. He only mentioned about a week ago, he said, look, I know people in the know about this subject. And to get that information out, he was shaking his head. He said, the information regarding UFOs is indigestible. And some of those latest UFO documents that are coming out from the government, it's got two things wrote on them. First one, it says, spiritual technology. What the hell is spiritual technology? And the other one is saying occult physics. What is that? Is there physics to occult? And what is spiritual technology? The government know, these guys up there, and they're trying to give you clues, but they're not allowed to say. All they can say is give you clues, like, oh, it's indigestible, or it'll be a very somber moment when we find out. We're going to have to replace ourselves in the system, how we manage this, and all sorts of things. They're trying to give us clues, but they just can't tell us.
I agree 100%. We did have a couple questions from the audience. I told the audience while we were talking, I typed in the chat for people to ask you their questions. So this one's from Jerry Lahane. Jerry Lahane says, what does Steve know about people on Mars? Or do you believe that there could be anything existing on Mars, like in biospheres or anything? Or do you think it's desolate?
I think it was, it was a very, like Earth, habitable. And there does seem to be scattered all over Mars remnants from architecture and machinery from millions of years ago. That's the best advice. I can't say that there's anything living there now. We might have microbiological life for sure, because there's something in some places on Mars. There's some water and ice. You only need them really for some type of biological life to thrive. But I'm not seeing anything in our solar system that there is some type of civilization, living civilization now. What I am seeing across the planets, moons, all sorts of different things throughout our solar system is that it was a hive. It seems to have been a hive of activity millions and millions. And it could be like 65 million years ago.
Wow.
But maybe we're the descendants. We just don't know. Maybe possible.
Yeah.
We have a certain type of rhythm, the human being, and that rhythm is more designed to be on Mars and the Martian day, which is 23 hours or something, as opposed to the 24-hour cycle of the day on planet Earth. So maybe that's a reason for it.
Yeah. Another question we had was from Spiderbite. She asked about gang stalking. This ties into like the targeted individual stuff where people report that they're being targeted and someone's gang stalking them, like someone's surveilling them or something like that. And what I thought was, entities can probably do that. Entities can probably hijack people and do stuff like that. Would you agree with that, or what do you think?
No, I mean, one of the biggest reasons why disclosure is not, I don't think, going to happen is the fact that how can it tell you that this phenomenon is right under our noses? It could be right next to us right now. We'd not know. It can interact with us at any given time. And you know what? They can't do a damn thing about it. They don't control it. They can't do anything with it. They can't, it's going to be difficult to drop that onto any people. But I do think that they can interact with us at any given time, and they can cause us hell. Yeah, they can cause problems. I know people that were plagued by phantom phone calls of electronic voices, strange things. And it was very similar to the strange voices, electronic voices that were heard during the Mothman prophecies. The Mothman incidents that took place at Point Pleasant, the same things were happening then. UFOs and these strange vocal phone calls from this electronic voice. It's really weird.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, like that was happening to Kill, right? Kill
Yeah,
was getting like weird messages, right? Like,
yeah.
yeah,
Electronic voices on phones. But he tried to search and he tried to track the fact that he was untrackable. It's as if the call had not existed. Something was tapping the source. Something was tapping the communication, the telephone communication, and interacting with them.
yeah, that's huge. And then Chloe had a question. She said, "Why do the elites need people to be assets?" She said, "Do you feel like the elites are trying to control the interdimensional stuff? Like, do you think the elites are like the people that are controlling the planet are in touch with these entities and they're working with them or something like that?"
Absolutely, 100%. They have been for a long time, and they get rewarded. You pay homage, you pay worship to these things, you do things, they will reward you with success, wealth, and health. What else can you ask for? And this is why they do it. And some of these things get very dark. Not only is the phenomena can be dark, but it also the practitioners can be. But don't get me wrong, I specialize in the dark areas. I mean, it's not like I don't think UFOs and can be euphoric. Those experiences can happen. People have nice experiences sometimes, but that's just the problem. This phenomenon is the same hand it feeds, is the same hand it bites. It's it could do either. It's hard to know. It's like a dog on who's schizophrenic. You don't know if you allow you to stroke it or it's going to bite you. It's the same thing. They deliver two different types of things to different people. It's that's what's so strange about it.
Yeah. I wanted to just that Jason asked about that. He asked about the benevolent encounters. Like, do you ever get people who have benevolent encounter, like good
Yeah.
encounters and stuff like that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. But the thing is, though, the good encounters gets a lot of support. It's mentioned a lot. People talk about it a lot. It's positive. It's supported. But if you have a bad experience, who do you go to? Because everybody's saying to you, "Oh no, no, it's euphoric. It's love and light." Well, it's not for some people. For many people. But the thing is that information gets suppressed. It doesn't get out, and they don't get no support. So that's why I work in that particular area, because all I'm trying to do is just raise it up level and put it all on the table. So look, you've got bad, you've got good. You decide. It's up to you. It's a gamble.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I think like that's a really good way of putting it. And do you work with experiencers? Is that kind of what you do? You
I
kind of
have
try to help
I have
experiencers?
worked with experiences, yeah, yeah, quite a number of them over the years, and they've got very different types of stories, for sure. But it ends up confusing, and then this is why they do it. Because the problem is when you're talking to an experiencer and they're telling you what they've experienced, well, they're not telling you what they've experienced. What they're telling you is what they can remember. Now, sometimes what they can remember isn't the experience. And then some people go, "Oh, I had a lovely experience," and then they go for hypnosis, and then they realize, "Oh, there was some bad stuff there, and I wish I never went to have hypnosis because now I can remember all this bad stuff." There's these screen memories and information placed in to make it look euphoric sometimes when it hasn't actually been, a bed of roses. Things have been quite nasty sometimes, but they didn't know that because they're left with this memory of it's all, oh, they care, it's all love and light and so on and so forth.
Yeah, and what I remember what I was going to say. I think a big part of this, or a big problem that we have in our society right now, is the fact that this is like, I mean, I think it's getting a lot better, but I think it's still ridiculed. Like if someone says they have an experience and they tell that to anybody in like mainstream society, they might get laughed at, or they might get called crazy, or they might get locked up in an
I
institution.
get
Like
it.
I feel
Yeah.
like we're moving away from that, but I still feel like
It's
people can
still
get really.
there, Rob. It's still there, Rob. It's, not as bad as it used to be, but it is still there. You get the old pointing and talking and whispering and, oh, he says he sees aliens and this and the other little green men. Look, you know what, wearing tin hats. I mean, come on. I mean, I mean, we're well past all that now. But there are still amount of people out there that have this the way they are. So I can understand when they don't want to come forward and share information. I mean, as ufologists and researchers and parapsychologists, we can only deal with the information that we currently have. How many people? There's probably more people out there that's never talked about these experiences. Never, which could top some of the best experiences we know on the planet, but we don't hear about them because maybe never talked about them. I believe there's more out there that's not been talked about than we do know.
Yeah, I agree. And then one thing I wanted to ask you is, are you still doing Phenomena Magazine, and are you still doing the Awakening Expo, and are you looking forward to that this year?
Yeah, so the Phenomena Magazine goes out every month. Phenomenamagazine.co.uk. It's a free magazine, so we utilize it for networking, and pushing out information. Every month, at the end of the month, it's available to download. We still do run our events, absolutely, yeah. We're just in a planning process as to what we're going to be doing this year. Last year's was in May, which was very good. But yeah, we plan to do one every year for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. Well, this was amazing, Steve. I know you're really busy, but I guess we could finish up now. But yeah, I was just say before we finish up, is there anything else you want to share with the audience, or anything you'd like to promote, and your website and your YouTube and all that stuff? And thank you for doing it. Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, of course. And you've mentioned Steve Mera Official, which is my YouTube channel. People can get hold of me on Facebook, on X, or LinkedIn, many different places like that. But I say to people, look, if they want to get in touch with me, because I've always made myself available. I'm not one of these big wigs in America that you can't ring them, you can't talk to them. I've always made sure I'm available because, it's important to be able to talk to people because you learn stuff. And I put the people first. And at the end of the day, if people want to find me, they can contact me. My phone number's there. There's details on my email, personal email. All they need to do is put my name in Google, Steve Mera. They tap my name in, Mera, Steve, Mera, Mera, into Google. You'll find it all sorts of different things. And I'll be reachable through that. So I'm always happy to listen to people for sure.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I put his YouTube screen, or Jason put his YouTube screen up. As I put it up on the screen, guys, it's at Steve Mera Official 2024. And guys, while everybody's still here, I just want to tell everybody I'll be live again tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern. I just don't have the link made yet. I'm going to make the link now. It's going to be Rich West. So another great guest, tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, Rich West, and he's going to be getting into all kinds of stuff. So all kinds of conspiracy stuff. So yeah, but yeah, thank you so much, Steve. And yeah, it was really nice seeing you again. And yeah, I enjoyed this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, keep in touch, Rob. And thank you for having me on. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future.
All right. Take care. Have a nice day.
Take care.